This video will examine the Units command in AutoCAD. You can access the units by typing Units at the command line or by going to the Application menu, Drawing Utilities, and Units. On the Drawing Units dialog box, you will see that there are 5 types of units available for use. There's architectural, decimal, engineering, fractional, and scientific notation. Of these 5, the only 2 that specify feet and inches are architectural and engineering. The other 3 do not specify units of inches or millimeters or anything else, and are technically unitless, but will have inches applied to them when you insert things. It is common to leave this insertion scale set to inches when working on drawings in the United States. Do not change it to feet or anything else. Right below the type, you will see that there's a box for change the precision. This precision only changes the displayed value, but not the actual value. You can change it from 0 with no places behind the decimal down to 0 with 7 or 8 places behind the decimal. It's common in most drawings to have 2 places behind the decimal, so I'm going to set it there for now. On the right hand side, you can choose what type of angle you will be using to measure. Again, decimal degrees is the default, but you will see that there is also degrees, minutes, and seconds, grads, radians, and surveyor's units. You can also adjust the precision of those angles here. If you check this box, it will make your angles measured clockwise, but this is not the AutoCAD standard. It's not the way most people learn to measure angles. When you want to specify distances in AutoCAD, it's important to understand what units you're using. For example, if I wanted to draw a line and make it 8.5 inches long, I'll just pick a point here and do a direct distance input. Using decimal degrees or decimal units, I can say 8.5, press enter, and it draws me a line that is 8.5 inches long. Now, I do not need to add extra zeros. Notice if I were to do this again and type in 8.5000, all of those extra zeros that I typed down there on the command line don't add any precision to the line. It's still exactly 8.5 inches long. The only thing that I do by typing in all of those extra zeros is add more time to my drawing, make my drawing less efficient. I could also, even though I have decimal units being used here, I could also type in a fractional value. But if I want to do that, I have to do it a proper way. So if I want 8.5 inches, I would type 8 and 1/2 inches. Notice on the command line that there's a dash between the whole number 8 and the fraction 1/2. Without that, I would have 81 divided by 2, which would actually give us an error message in AutoCAD. And notice that I cannot also leave a space. If I come in here and I type 8 and put a space for the fraction, it actually sees that space bar as an enter key. So you have to, if you want to type in a whole number and a fraction, you have to type in the whole number, dash, and then the fraction, and then enter. That way you've got your line drawn the correct distance. If I change my units to fractional, it works the same way. I'll change my precision here to 1/16 of an inch, choose OK. If I wanted to draw again a line that is 8.5 inches long, I type 8 and 1/2, enter, it draws my line. But I'm not limited to using fractional dimensions I can use decimal dimensions if I want. So again, if I do this the same way, I could just type in 8.5, enter, and it draws that line. So regardless of whether I'm using decimal dimensions or architectural dimensions or scientific notation, I can type in 8.5 and it'll always know what I want, or I could type in the fraction 8-1/2 and it'll always know what I want. One thing that it won't know, however, on either decimal, fractional, or scientific is if I type in feet and inches. So again, going back to decimal here, choose OK. If I want it to be 8.5 inches, you have to leave the inches off. So if I type 8.5 and then put in the quotation mark for inches, notice on the command line, press enter, I get an error message that says invalid point. Let me do this again. So I'll start this off and I'll say 8.5 inches, press enter. It says point or option keyword required. And again, the reason is because in the units command, decimal, fractional, and scientific are technically unitless. It won't understand feet and inches. If I want to be able to type in feet and inches, then I need to either use architectural or engineering. So choosing architectural here, again, my precision is set to a 1/16 of an inch. I'll choose OK. Notice now that I can come in here and I can type in 8.5 and press enter, and it still draws that line 8.5 inches long. And it does that because it assumes inches. However, if I wanted it to be, say, 1 foot 8.5 inches long, then what I can do is I can come in and say, okay, let's draw a line that is 1 foot, notice the apostrophe for feet, and then 8. You don't have to put a dash in between the number of feet and the number of inches. The apostrophe sets the foot apart from the number of feet, apart from the number of inches, and then 8.1/2. Just press enter. Again, I do not need to put in the quotation marks for inches because it assumes inches. So there's my line that is 1 foot 8.5 inches long. If I was lazy and didn't want to type in the fraction, I could still do the same thing. I could type in 1 foot and then 8.5. It will do the conversion and make that line still 1 foot 8.5 inches long. Or if I wanted to, I could just type in, say, 20.5, which is 1 foot 8.5 inches to get that to work. So if you're setting up a new drawing, the first thing you need to do is to set your units. Keep in mind that decimal, fractional, and scientific notation are unitless, but architectural and engineering are have units. One last thing about units. Notice that my precision here is set to 4 places. That's not very common. I'm going to change it down to 2 places behind the decimal here. Now this is just a displayed precision. AutoCAD actually records the actual precision of every point in space to several places behind the decimal point. But this is just changing what you have displayed here. So if I choose OK, and I come in and I want to maybe put some text on this drawing. So I'll make a text box. Notice here that my precision right now is 0.20. I'm going to change that to 1/8 of an inch, or 0.125. When I press enter, notice that it changed that 0.125 up here to 0.13. And it did that because it's rounding that 0.125 value just for display purposes only. If I were to come in here and type in some text and click outside the box, that text is actually 0.125 tall, even though it displayed it as 0.13 in that dialog box up there. And I can prove that to you by going back to the units command, Changing the precision now to, say, 3 places behind the decimal, choose OK. When I double click on this text to modify it, notice now in the command line, or in the size here, it actually has the 0.125 instead of that 0.13 rounded value. This concludes the video for the text command in AutoCAD.